let's introduce Jess. Um, I can't imagine who I would rather be talking about this with tonight. Jess is a seasoned campaign hand and political commentator, who has worked on many campaigns, notably the Hillary Clinton 2016 campaign, probably having some feelings about that right now. Um, and just like the sharpest mind in strategic communications, and an on-air expert. You've seen Jess on CNN, you have seen Jess on MSNBC, probably lots of other places that I don't watch that Jess turns up as well. And also Jess for a long time hosted the acclaimed Sirius XM radio show Signal Boost with the amazing Zerlina Maxwell, which is a great listen, and has been published like everywhere. So just a political strategic smarty pants, and is going to help hold our hand as we unpack all of this stuff tonight. Thank you. And I should say also on the EducateUS Advisory Board, we're really glad to say. Jess, thank you for being here.
Thank you for having me. I'm so glad I get to geek out about all of this with you. What
I
a
know.
weird time. Okay, I've been doing this for 20 years, right? I had a back and forth with a reporter a little while ago about how I was going to be described in a story. And he was like, campaign strategist. And I was like, can I be veteran campaign strategist yet? And he was like, how many years do you have? So I added them, and it's 20. And in all of those 20 years, nothing prepares me for this. Do you realize on Saturday it's going to be 1 month since the debate? Like we all need rest. Thank you all for being here at 7:30 at night to learn
Oh my
about
God,
this. Like
yes.
it is incredible. Like y'all are going to save democracy. That's what's happening.
That is what's happening. Yeah, I described you as an ace political strategist, but yeah, veteran for sure. You've survived a lot.
It's
So,
true.
help talk us through the thing we are going to survive next, which is Project 2025. So, I just would love to do some table setting. I'm sure some people here already know what it is, and some people here maybe are new to hearing about it. So, what is it? Who's behind it? And the question that I have that I actually been dying to ask you is, why did they publish it?
Yeah, that's the question right there. So in 2020, the Republicans did something very smart politically. If you don't have any principles, and that is what you are
Strategic. We'll
governed
say
by.
it was very strategic.
It was strategic. They didn't have a platform. Like for the first time ever, a major political party went to their convention and there was no platform meeting, no platform committee, no platform was adopted. The only thing that they said was they would support the agenda of Donald J. Trump. And we all saw what the agenda was. So that worked very well. We know how slippery Trump is. He says one thing, he says the other thing, he says the middle thing, like he makes no sense when he says the thing. So it's really hard to pin down exactly how he feels about something and what he wants to do about it. And that is, of course, on purpose. So since that strategy had worked out so well for them in 2020, I honestly have no idea why they would have chosen to publish Project 2025. What Project 2025 is the handbook that conservatives and MAGA and Donald Trump want to use to implement their agenda across the country when he retakes the White House. It is an incredibly lengthy document. It is quote unquote written by the president of the Heritage Foundation.
It's like the most detailed political platform that has ever been published.
Yeah, yeah. It's like Elizabeth Warren did not have plans this detailed. This is a whole other level of it. So it's written by the president of the Heritage Foundation. The Heritage Foundation is probably the oldest Republican think tank, or at least oldest most that's still relevant, and it has moved farther and farther to the right. We have the Heritage Foundation to thank for, Justice Kavanaugh. We have the Heritage Foundation to thank for a lot of the MAGA movement. They are quite extreme, but their leadership changed a little while ago, just like the leadership of the Republican Party did. And so while they used to sort of be this economics-y think tank, now they are really just truly extreme, frightening MAGA agenda. And and so my guess is that they were trying to sort of recapture some of that Heritage Foundation, cachet that like led them be. They used to be a credible organization, hyper conservative. I disagreed with everything they said, but they were a credible organization with, people who were in fact policy experts working there. So I think maybe Project 2025 was a little bit about like trying to reclaim some of that, because people know that it's really changed quite a bit. And in an effort to do that, they published a very detailed policy agenda, which basically it talks about implementing a marriage and family focus throughout government and doing away with what they call the administrative state, which basically means that the only people in charge of anything from pollution regulation to abortion are politicians. Like if you take out the quote unquote bureaucrats, those are the experts, those are the scientists,
And
those are
like
the
the
agency
EPA
heads.
and the
Right,
FDA,
exactly.
like the food supply won't be regulated.
Yes.
Like, yeah.
Yes.
And the
So
Supreme Court, by the way, already basically gutted that.
right. Well, this is their agenda. Like, that's the
Yeah.
thing. Like, they are already trying, and in some cases successfully implementing Project 2025.
Yes.
So as you see Trump try to distance himself from this, and he already is, just remember that like it's happening already. Like there is no part of Project 2025 that is not already somewhere in the country.
Either on the state level or in the, being done by
Exactly.
the courts, or yeah, they're trying it whatever way they can.
And hilariously, Trump's efforts to distance himself from Project 2025 got much, much tougher today when
Just
they
heard that.
released that the foreword, which again, why not change this? But the foreword to Project 2025, which is going to be published in book form so more of us can read it, was written by one J.D. Vance. He was, boy, did he say nice things about it. And boy, were they couched in violent terms. So now we have this foreword written by the man that Donald Trump chose to be president if he could not serve any longer, where he's like, we have to get the muskets ready and come for, abortion. It's a stunning thing to have
Yeah.
for a party that is incredibly secretive and like really likes to do stuff in the middle of the night because their agenda is wildly unpopular and
And
they
they
know
know
that.
it is. I mean, and I'll also say, like, to Trump administration, like from members of the Trump administration were the leads writing this whole fucker.
Yes.
So let's talk about what it says about sex ed, because boy howdy. I'm just gonna be honest. I said, I'd seen stuff about sex ed in it, and I was like, we should really talk about this. And then once we announced this event, I was like, I need to really sit down and study this thing and see what it says about sex ed. And every time I went back in and tried to understand the language in there more, it like blew my eyebrows off more. Because the implications are, thank you for thanking me for cursing. That is truly a feature of my personality. I can suppress it if I need to, but it takes effort that I think is better spent on other things right now. Um, so here are the headlines, and then we'll get into some of the stuff that is even beyond the headlines. There's two main headlines of the way that Project 2025 is going to undermine sex education in this country if it is ever enacted. And spoiler alert, we can stop them. That's what we're going to spend a bunch of time talking about, but we need to know what's at stake here. The first is that they have defined pornography incredibly broadly. And we've seen this, we see this in propaganda against sex ed everywhere. I see actually Megra Bell from Worcester right now who had a fight over sex ed that I know, Jess, you were also involved in, and they did the pornography thing there, right? So this is not a new frame that like the content of sex ed, literally everything from diagrams of the human body, naming the body parts, to talking about consent, to, like the actual sort of like
Mentioning a gay person.
mentioning that gender is not just a binary thing. Yes, all of these things are classed as pornography, and pornography is called on to be made illegal. And they explicitly say that teachers and librarians that provide this kind of content to young people should be registered as sex offenders. And so I just want to say in plain language, that makes it impossible to teach sex education. And it makes it impossible to legally teach sex education, not just in public schools, but at all. For anyone here who's a sex educator or wants to communicate this, possibly even to their own children, it makes it illegal to teach sex education. And I've stared at this text over and over again because I've been like, that is very, even for all the extreme stuff in Project 25, it's very extreme. But I do not see another interpretation of it. It is pretty plain what the agenda is. And then if that were not enough, they also, and this is going to be a little legal technical, but we'll get through it. They talk, as everyone here probably knows, they talk a lot about parents' rights. Parents' rights must be paramount over the schools in every fucking way. But what they specifically say about that is that parents as a class should be given strict scrutiny under the law and should be given a private right of action to sue for their rights. And what that means in plain language is any individual parent who doesn't like what the school is teaching has the right to sue the school and possibly, who knows, administrators, individual teachers, librarians, over it. And this strict scrutiny standard means the parents are almost guaranteed to prevail. It'd be very hard to defeat them in court over it, over literally anything that they don't like. So that obviously means most or all public schools in the country will immediately drop sex education if they were teaching it. But it also honestly would make it impossible to run a public school, period, full stop. And we know, I'm just going to say all this quiet stuff out loud at this point, because this is the point we have arrived at. They've been wanting to undermine public education for a long time. That's what the voucher stuff is about. That's
the goal. It's been the goal for as long as I've been working in politics. It used to come in the form of funding.
Yes.
And now it's coming in the form of a tax on sex ed. Like they have decided, and when you think about, like, how popular sex ed is, right? Before the attacks, we were looking at like upwards of 95% of America loves sex ed. And that's like 95% of America doesn't
It's still,
agree
I mean, Planned
on, like,
Parenthood did this
puppies.
last year and found it was like 80-90%. Yeah.
Right. So you have to wonder, right? Why are you going after something that is that popular? And it's because sex ed isn't really the target. The
No.
target is public education. And they feel like sex ed is the best way to gin up their base to attack public education and to do things like pass these vague laws and the vigilante sort of threatening of teachers, which makes you self-police. Like that's
Yes.
how it's going to work. It's
And
not.
we see that happening already. Like we
Yes, we do.
already see that happening in schools where they want to maybe improve sex ed and they're not doing it because they're already afraid of the attacks that they've seen happen at other schools, right? So that's already happening. And if this comes to pass, like I just don't see what school is going to teach it.
Let's be honest, that's how fascism works.
Yes.
Fascism is a tyranny of the minority. So the only way that the minority can hold sway over a majority, other than violence, which is a part of it as well, is when the majority starts policing themselves. That is a function of authoritarianism, of fascism. It can't work if everybody doesn't buy in some way for their own safety. And I'm not demonizing the teachers that are making these very tough decisions to take books off their shelves before somebody tries to fire them. But that is part of the goal. And so we need to recognize that when laws are vague, or when it's like, wait, doesn't this allow for a loophole that would let anybody, like a citizen, arrest me for sending like, it's not going to say that. But anytime you can read it that way, that's on purpose. Like the vagueness is on purpose. It's easy sometimes to be like, man, they really don't know what they're talking about. This is especially true in the repro space. And it's true. They don't know what they're talking about, but they don't care to know because it doesn't matter that they know. And the vagueness is part of it. So I'm sure we're going to get a lot of questions about citations. And
And
citations.
we have a handout that we're gonna drop when you and I are done talking so that people have some of the main citations. We made like a little explainer document that you can have and also you can share with people, and we will be talking about that. So we will get you those citations, I promise.
I wanted to add a
Oh yeah.
little qualification on the citations. Maybe you and I
Yeah.
disagree on this, which would be interesting. Like, I like having them, right? Having them is good and fine.
Yes.
I obviously don't like using them in conversation with people, and we can talk
No.
more about that later. But part of it is that they're making it deliberately hard to cite. Like, there is no definition of pornography in Project 2025. You have to read through to realize that they're
You have to get
saying,
pieces together. Yeah.
pornographic materials in the same breath as they are saying books with LGBTQ characters. So there's no way to point to a paragraph to be like, look here, this is where they are saying that they are defining pornography this way, and that means X. That's on purpose also. They will also just reissue it with different page numbers. So like, get the citations, trust
I
the
not thought of that,
citations.
Jess.
Of course they will. I've done it before.
Well, we've got quotes, not just page numbers. We got the quotes.
Yes, and the quotes are very helpful because then at least you can control F and figure out what page
Yes,
is in
exactly.
that particular given moment. But like, our arguments against this need to rest on something other than sourcing it. Like, we need to
Yeah.
make the emotionally resonant case about this. This is
So I
not.
want to get to that in like one sec, but I want to do just a little nerdery about the sex ed stuff because there's actually even more. We did the
Oh
headline
yeah, of
stuff,
course.
and the even more stuff sort of doesn't matter because of the headline stuff, but like they also call for like eradicating the word sex and gender and a whole lot of other words from all federal documents and policy. And in the case of sex ed, replacing it with abstinence propaganda. They're talking about pushing federally funded clinics to provide marriage propaganda, et cetera, instead of like actual medical advice in terms of prevention of STIs and sexual health. Like there, it's like, I think the thing I want to say out here out loud that we haven't actually said, although we're circling around, which is like, it's also very Christian nationalist. It is
Oh yeah.
an explicitly Christian nationalist worldview driving this document. And it's about putting those extremist right-wing Christian nationalist, note I'm not saying Christian because I don't think Jesus would be down with any of this. What do I know? I'm a Jew, but that's not how I read it. But Christian nationalists, this is about creating a theocracy. Yes, like crisis centers, exactly, at every fucking level. So the news is super depressing. We don't have to live here. We can get into details if people want us to get into more weeds. We honestly, please trust me when I say we actually left a bunch of stuff out that's in there about sex ed. Because sort of it doesn't matter if it's all illegal. But Jess, we're going to talk about specifics call to action, but I would love for you to talk about what you've seen that's working in general about pushing back against Project 2025. Because the great news is when people find out about this, the mass majority of people are like, oh, hell the fuck no.
Right.
So if you could talk about the big picture in terms of pushback against Project 2025 and how we should be thinking about it.
And that's the big thing. It's like, that most people are like, hell the fuck no. That is the biggest point that I'm going to make right here. Because when we think about having these conversations, right? When we automatically think about debating a Trump supporter. We think about changing the mind of somebody who thinks Project 2025 is a good thing or that we shouldn't have sex ed. That's why we want the citations, right? We're talking to somebody who is bought into that ideology and, they're not going to listen. I am here to tell you it is okay. It is in fact necessary to let those people go. If they are in your family, I am so sorry, you can't let them go. It is long, hard work, but you can actually bring them around. But that is a years, possibly decades game. That is not a November game. The reason why it's okay to let them go is because the vast majority of America, and I am talking between 60 and 90%, hate every part of this agenda. They do not want their high schoolers educated in marriage education using child funding. Like they don't want condoms removed from they don't want any of that. They don't want any of this money going to this. So when you talk to people, expect that they're going to agree with you largely. Probably they just don't know about it. Like as of a couple weeks ago, people like Jaclyn have done a lot of really good work to fix this. 70% of America didn't know what Project 2025 was, had never heard of it. So if you put that 70%, lay it over the like vast majority of people who like sex ed, you're more, pick a random person off the street, you are
Yep.
likely talking to somebody who agrees with you and has never heard of Project 2025. Those are the conversations I want you to have. In fact, the other conversations are also part of their strategy. Like people who are, you know, trolls on they're not trying to debate you, right? Their goal is to
They're
waste your
trying to
time.
waste your time.
They're trying
They're
to waste your
actually trying
time.
to
It's going to drain
frustrate
your
you
energy.
and demoralize you. Yes.
Yes, it's about your mental health and your energy level. So let that go. Stop thinking about how to debate somebody on Project 2025 and just start thinking about how to tell every human being that you know in your network that it exists and that it's something that we need to fight back against. And we do need to talk about just Project 2025 because this will live beyond Trump. Like if we win in November, this document exists. This is their agenda.
Oh
This
yeah,
is
and they're
the
going to try it in
absolute blueprint.
every state and every municipality where they think they can get away with it. They're going to file lawsuits to try and make this happen at the Supreme Court. It is definitely not going away if slash when we win in November. I will say that you also can tell people what Kamala Harris has said about sex education if you want to, because she's on the record. She's on the record in 2018. Pro sex ed, she gave us a repro speech just this year where she explicitly called out the need for sex education. So we don't have to guess what the choice is between when it comes to sex education. Kamala Harris, you know, she hasn't had a minute to publish like her first 100 days plan yet, but we know that we have a generally a repro champion, generally an LGBTQ champion, and specifically a sex ed champion in Kamala Harris. I should say specifically for Educate Us, we are not endorsing Kamala Harris. We only endorse school board members. By the way, if you know any school board members running, send them our way. We love to get school board members elected. I never don't say that. Just respond to any one of the 7 emails I've sent you this week, and we can get started. But you can also find the 4 candidates tab at educateusaction.org. But so this is not an endorsement of Kamala, but the records could not be more clear. So I have good news for folks, which is that we have made a way for you all to make it easy for you to reach out to people and tell them all of this stuff. Oh, Candace just dropped the 4 candidates link in there. Now, Candace, could you drop in there the link to our explainer that I teased everybody about, and then also the link to sign up for the relational organizing app? So we're using an app called Empower. I think it's called Empower. It's new to us. And yes, what it does is you get in there, you go into your contacts, you only put in the contacts you want to. It doesn't eat up all your contacts. It has really good privacy provisions. These are good nonprofit progressives. This is not just a random company that's eating your data. So you put in whatever contacts you want in there, and then you can call them, you can text them, you can use WhatsApp, you can use Instagram, whatever you like. And we have a pre-populated little message you can send along with the explainer we just dropped, or you can write your own thing. And we know, everyone who does organizing knows that the most effective way to reach people is to talk to people who already trust you. Right. So I'm all for what Jess just said, which is you can walk up to a random person on the street and talk to them about 2020 Project.
That was statistical. That wasn't a recommendation. Talk to your friends.
If you feel like doing that, I'm for it anyway. But if you want to do the lowest stress, most effective thing, just text people you already know who maybe haven't heard all the details about this. Make sure they know what's going on. Make sure they're registered to vote. And then if they are fired up about it, you can ask them to tell their friends as well.
And look, I mean, it's me, and so the people I choose to surround myself with are obviously self-selecting, but I haven't been in a room in days where the presidential election didn't come up. So your job for the next however long that lasts is every time somebody says anything about Kamala Harris or Joe Biden or Donald Trump, you say, oh my God, have you heard about Project 2025? It's going to make sex ed illegal and force librarians to register as sex offenders. And you're going to see the eyes go wide and you're going to send everybody a link. So whenever you hear the presidential campaign being discussed, jump right in.
Although I also want to say the Senate campaigns, the
Sure.
congressional campaigns, because those are key to passing or blocking legislation, depending on who is in the White House. And also, we have a sex ed voter pledge. So if you're interested in getting more involved at the school board level in terms of making sure you're voting for the right school board candidates, we can help you with that as well. And Moms for Liberty wrote the education plan in Project 2025. And Moms for Liberty is running candidates against for school board in many, many, many districts right now around the country, although they too are running stealth in a lot of places because they know how unpopular their agenda is. So we have to look at this at every level, but yes, the presidential is the like hot conversation right now, and you should use whatever's hot. Also the presidential matters. Look, I don't say this about a lot of things because we're a local organizing organization. But in terms of stopping Project 2025, probably the presidential is the most consequential election.
Yeah, I'm seeing a question in here from Catherine that we should answer now, because
Okay.
the question is, how do they implement the goals? Legislation, courts, executive power. It's executive power, largely. That is
Yeah.
why the White House is so important to stopping 2025. You can already see 2025 being implemented legislatively in states where the Republicans have a supermajority or they control both chambers and they have a friendly governor. So you can do it the other way, but they
Yeah.
are suggesting pretty much unchecked power for the president. The
Right.
courts are a part of it, but the part that the courts play is that when, EducateUS or the ACLU sues, that will be taken to a court that has already been stacked with Trump loyalists. And if that hasn't, the appeals court will. And if that hasn't, it'll go to the Supreme Court, and we know what will happen then. So each branch plays a role, but it's
But
executive
also the
action.
executive is shaping the courts like never before. Yeah. So yeah,
So
for
we
sure.
do have another question
Yeah.
if we can take it. Molly had a question about, let me just read it to you. Can the lack of citations / vagueness of definitions in conjunction with the ability to sue over any violations work in the opposite direction, where parents can sue over discussions of abstinence or / heterosexual relationships?
Okay, first I'm going to say neither Jesser and I has a law degree. But we know a couple of things. So just know that neither of us are lawyers. Here's my understanding with the answer to that question. It can in the short term, but A, you're going to run up against those stacked courts that just mentioned. And B, if you have schools that can't teach anything because no matter what they do, someone's going to sue them, then the public education system collapses. And that is, as we said, actually part of their long-term goal. So yeah, we could use that, and probably people will use that to sue for more progressive things in schools, but in the big picture, it adds to the undermining of the school system. But Jess, do you have anything to add to that?
Yeah, I mean, I think you'll see it the same way you see, when they want to mandate that the 10 Commandments has to be placed, then somebody else will sue for their denomination until there are
The
supposedly so
Satanic Temple
many.
suits to like get
Yeah,
Baphomet. Yeah,
they do great organizing work.
yeah.
But so I mean, it's a neat tactic, but ultimately it doesn't actually stand in the way of the agenda. Like the Satanic Temple, is, I'm sure, a thorn in the side of everybody who wants to put the 10 Commandments thing up, but like, are they actually like, a force for good fighting against? No.
I
So
mean, they cost the opposition money at least.
yeah.
So,
Yeah, every little bit counts, do what you can, but it's
yeah,
it's not
yeah.
gonna be the silver bullet for us. Also, our side just doesn't work like that. Like, how much do you want to see President Joe Biden take that immunity ruling for a stroll in the next few months? But it's not going to happen.
Bad.
We don't do that. We
Is
have
it really not going to happen?
I mean, look, if it is, I'll be thrilled. But I've been a Democrat for a really long time, and we really do try to practice what we preach.
But I want it. Okay. Candace, do we have other questions?
Yes, we do. Matter of
All
fact,
right.
Meg just asked a question about she's in a trifecta blue state. And there are things that, or she's asking, are there things that we proactively can do, big policy work like legislation or administrative advocacy that we could do should Trump be in office again? What are the opportunities this presents to us to be proactive?
Jaclyn, do you have
Jess?
said specific policy ideas? Because my answer to this is we just got to defeat him.
Yeah, I have to say, when it comes to, there are some topics that where it could help, but the problem is that Project 2025, if Trump retakes the White House, he can impose Project 2025 on blue trifecta states all day, every day. They will make it illegal to mail contraception or abortion pills to anyone, meaning suppliers, to mail that to distributors, right? Like, which means it will be nearly impossible to get contraception or abortion anywhere in this country. And that's before the personhood laws, the federal personhood laws. If they make it forced federal registration of sex offenders in all states, like we have to stop.
I think the mifepristone argument is sort of the best one for this. I'm in a blue trifecta state as well, and like if they repealing the Comstock laws act as part of Project 2025. It's one of the things that they spell out in the greatest of detail. And what that means is that it becomes illegal to mail mifepristone. So that means
you mean the using of Comstock, not the repealing of Comstock.
Right. Sorry, the using
Yes.
of Comstock. So distributors can't mail to pharmacies, like doctors can't mail to patients, like Canada couldn't mail to the US, like it's the entire system shuts down. So that means it doesn't matter if you live in Arizona or New York, you can't have what is it's an effective national ban. You don't have to ban it nationally, you just make it impossible for anybody to obtain it.
Unless somebody like literally smuggles it, right? Like
Right.
illegal, illegal smuggling will be the only way to get any of these things.
Yeah.
At huge risk and cost.
Right. And obviously, the people who are doing that will be criminalized. And so that's sort of that's the best answer that I have for what it means for blue states. I'm sure there are things you can, there are things that you can do to write stuff into your state constitution, but when HHS funding and Title IX funding and Title X funding and Title 4B funding dry up, will only go to faith-based abstinence programs, and that's the truth for all of those.
Yeah, I mean, literally, they get rid of the Department of Education.
Yeah.
In Project 2025, like just done. They get rid of free and reduced school lunches. They get rid of funding for low-income schools. Like, that's everywhere. All that federal money and all those federal laws. I wish there was an answer.
I know, me too. I know, but it like whenever I get that question, and I'm getting that more and more, like, how do we gird for it if it happens? It's like, no, we just, all of that energy that you would think about for like how to mitigate the bad, put it towards stopping it in the first place.
Candace, what else we have?
We have a question from Soraya that says, are poor white Trump supporters being made aware of what's at stake for them?
No, not at all. They're in a bubble that is listening to Newsmax and OANN, and they are not hearing anything about this. And if they are hearing it, they're hearing that it is something we made up that Trump is denying. No, absolutely not. These are the people that I'm saying it is okay to let them go. If you are already a Trump supporter, they are a minority. Focus on the rest of folks. But no, the ecosystem is so closed now that unless they have somebody, like, it is so important if you are the daughter or the niece or the longtime family friend, you might, and you have one of those supporters in your world, you might be the only conduit to reality. So just like keep creating a space for them to ask questions. Tell them that you're open to having a conversation if they ever want to. Honestly, it's very similar to the advice that we give to friends of people who are in abusive relationships. Make sure that they know your door is always open, but don't press too hard. You could be the lifeline there.
Can I do a super fast deep canvassing training?
Please.
So there's this great technique called deep canvassing, which we use on phones and doors. We're actually working right now on developing a persuasion script around sex ed using deep canvassing. And the way it's different from normal sort of traditional phone calls and for political purposes and door knocking for political purposes, which gets called canvassing, is it involves getting really curious about the person you're trying to persuade before you try to persuade them. And if you've got someone who's on the fence or you think might be gettable, but you're having trouble and they're like, you're going in a back and forth fact war and you're getting in a little recursive loop arguing with them, here's my one weird trick. And this is the like most boiled down. You can do also a deep canvassing training that is many hours long. This is like the most boiled down thing I can tell you. Get curious about them and why they care so much and why are they so dug in about this. Ask them why they care about, literally ask them, why do they care about this? Why are they so passionate about it? What does it mean to them? And see if you can get them to tell you a specific story about, which is like, has like a time, a place, a location. How did they feel when whatever that is happened? Why did they feel that way? Why did you feel that way is actually the magic question, the most magic question, but you have to ask the other ones to get there. And what you're listening for is to genuinely understand where they're coming from and also see if you can identify values that you have in common. And if you pull out far enough, you do, right? I also want kids to grow up safe. Like, like if you get macro enough, there are values. And then you can, once you really listen, and they have to feel listened to, and like you think their perspective is valid. You don't have to agree with them, but you have to be not blowing them off. And they can tell if you mean it or not. You have to find that feeling in you. Then you can tell them a story that illustrates that you share the same value, but you come to a different conclusion. And then you can try to persuade them. And this can take the temperature down in the conversation so beautifully and really make it at a human level. And it has been shown to move people not only in big ways, but also in ways that last. Because what it does is you help people work through their own emotions. If somebody's stuck in a place of fear and bias, they actually really need to work that through emotionally, not logically. So that's my one weird trick for if you're trying to persuade somebody who you're in like a little.
That was really beautiful and actually very helpful for me to remember that like there is a formula to do it. It's so close to cult deprogramming. It's really hard. It's
It
really
is.
hard. If you're willing to do it, do it. But please don't do it if it's draining you. Like
Yes.
if it is a part of what you're doing because you care about your dad or your uncle or whatever, like then go for it. But if it makes you less able to have the conversations with your book club or, you know, the women at the yoga studio or the, you know, the people at school drop off or wherever you interact with people, now you know my hobbies. If it takes away from being able to do that, let it go. Like really keep your energy up. We are all I mean, I feel like this and I think everybody else feels like this too. Especially I'm seeing a lot of names on this call that have been in this fight for a very long time. Like I'm tired. And with this like infusion of hope that we've gotten, like I'm on this like emotional like I need to figure out, like we all need to take some time. We all need to
Yes.
protect the mental space. Like this is a lot. The stakes are incredibly high. So if you find yourself doing anything, honestly, that makes it harder for you to get up and do your work tomorrow, stop doing that. These
But
conversations should be restored.
find something else to do that feels okay. Don't just not do the thing.
Right.
The other thing I want to say is don't confuse MAGA Trump supporters with Republicans. But the reality is there are actually a lot of registered Republicans who don't love Trump. They may wind up voting for him or they may not, and they're gettable. In our message testing, we found sex ed messages that moved self-identified conservatives 13 points toward wanting to vote for a pro-sex ed candidate. Like, don't just assume because someone's a Republican that they're not
Totally.
gettable.
Yeah, you
So
don't get to 90% support with just
yeah,
Democrats. I wish you
yeah,
could, but
exactly,
you totally can't.
exactly. So don't confuse what Jess is saying about hardcore Trumpers with all Republicans.
Yes, I should have made that very clear. I'm
Yeah.
talking independents, I'm talking Republicans. Like The people that I'm telling you to let go, they're that 32% that are, 2020 was stolen and January 6th was tourists. Like, those are the people I'm telling you to let go.
Candace, what else do we have? I see a bunch of stuff popping up in the chat.
Yeah, absolutely. Soraya has a follow-up question about working at C3 organizations actually and having a workaround. She's not allowed to canvas. And so based on her organization, is there a workaround?
Look, I'm not a lawyer, and neither is Jess. We've said that already. But you can talk to your friends. I don't think it's illegal to talk to your friends on your own time. You can canvas your friends and family, and that is the most effective thing to do. Whether you use our app or do it your own way, maybe check in with whoever's counsel to your C3 if you want to be real careful. But like, they can't stop you from talking to your friends and family.
No, and that's what we're asking you to do. The postcard writing is great, and the door knocking is great. Kind of like, really, the thing that works is to talk to the people you are already talking to. Talk to the people who trust you. So if it feels like canvassing, you're probably doing it wrong. Like, it should feel like conversations with the people that you would be having anyway. So unless you are like barred by your employer from talking to your spouse or sister about your political inclinations, I don't see how this is at all a violation of that, especially if you're doing it. I mean, do it on your own time just to be sure.
Yes,
But
definitely do it on your own time from your own email or phone accounts or whatever. Candace, can you drop the link to our relational organizing app again for folks who do want to talk to friends and family? We made it really easy. I should say this is kind of a beta, so we're also going to be following up with you to ask how you find the app so we can make it better. So don't be shy if you're like, this app is confusing, or I wish it had this set up. Like, we genuinely want to know how to make this better for everybody. What else, Candace? What are we talking about?
Well, Lisa wants to know, how the hell did we get here?
Well, Lisa, when this country was founded, we said that all men were created equal, but we left a bunch of people out. 200 years later, here we are. The fight for white supremacy is only stranger than it was then.
I will give a more strategic answer, although that is 100% correct. We are here in part because the Heritage Foundation started as a tiny, ignored organization in the 1970s and played a long fucking game. The Heritage Foundation is behind Project 2025. They were a very marginal organization when they launched, and they played a long game. And I will tell you that EducateUS intends to play a long game too. When I founded EducateUS in 2021, I told everybody this is a 20, 30-year fight. And now I think it's probably more like a 30, 40-year fight. But the way that we got here is that we didn't play our own big, juicy, progressive vision long game. And they did. But we can fight this now. I believe we can shut it the fuck down, at least at the executive level. And we can build now. What is that adage about, like, the best time to have started was whatever, and then
the second best is now.
Second best time to start is now.
Yeah. I feel like we've gotten a couple more.
Yeah, we're getting some really good questions. Before we go on, if I could just ask one, this is coming from me. As far as if we could talk on the mandate for leadership from the 80s that the Heritage Foundation did actually do and push through, I think that actually might be a good conversation, because they did that, right? Or did they?
I mean, I don't know about that. Maybe you do, Candace. Maybe Justin does.
This is something that I have definitely heard of. This was the like conservative promise that they did in the 80s. Like Project 2025 is sort of like an updated version of it, but I don't know it well enough to speak on it. So I don't want to, but Candace, do you?
My understanding is that it is a lot of what Reagan's administration was built on, that they did a very similar tactic that what they're trying to do now with Project 2025. And they pretty much spelled out in the mandate for leadership what the incoming conservative president would do, and daggone if dude didn't do it. So
Right.
we don't want to repeat a Reagan administration.
No, that's an important point. Like, we had the mandate for leadership, we had the contract with America. Like, they do sometimes just tell us exactly what they're gonna do and then go ahead and do it. So we have seen this before.
Lisa had a question about worst case scenario. She says, okay, Trump wins. Project 2025 starts getting implemented. In another 4 years, is there a way to dismantle it?
Maybe. It's going to be much, much harder because of the aforementioned lack of administrative state and Department of Education and the rest of it. I mean, the answer is yes. We have watched countries crawl out of fascism, but it's a generations game at
Yeah.
that point. You're not talking about 2028.
I mean, I don't mean to get this too dark, but if Trump is still alive in 2028, he's not letting there be any kind of real election. There'll be a sham election. I don't know if JD Vance has the actual backbone to pull that off if Trump is no longer with us by the time that comes along. TBD on that, but it's going to be a lot harder to come back from it than it is to stop it, which is why we have to put everything we have into stopping it now.
Nina would like to know, can you say more about the link between Trump and Project 2025? This is what I am most likely to get pushback on.
I would say the two really big ones are that the document was literally written by high-level members of his White House and both campaigns, and his vice president wrote the foreword.
Also, I think early on, Trump's PAC, like a Trump supporting PAC, like ran ads supporting Project 2025
Oh,
as
he used
Trump's.
to be for it. He's said it before.
Yeah, you can find records of him being for it before he became against it when it became unpopular. So it's anybody who, I think there is a little bit of a credibility problem only because the kind of people who thought Roe v. Wade would never be overturned are now saying this can't happen. Like this such an extreme thing won't happen. And they want to believe that. There's an American exceptionalism thing happening here where people who believe like America is a fundamentally good place. And so something this bad just can't happen here. And so they're looking for any reason to believe that. And so the other thing I would say is like, don't get in a fact war about Trump and 2025, like get underneath that feeling that they have that this couldn't happen here. Like have an emotional conversation with that person, not a fact conversation with that person. We know that stories and emotions persuade much better than facts.
Indeed.
I have time for a couple more questions.
Great. So Raya has a really good one. She asks, is the ultimate agenda to eventually get more Black and brown people incarcerated to contribute more and more to free labor, like via the school to prison pipeline by criminalizing public education?
I mean, whether that's the ultimate goal or just a side effect
A
that
happy
they would
side effect for
like,
them, yes. Yeah.
I mean, I think you've made the important point that will be a result of these policies being implemented for sure. And we know for we know for a fact that that is not a result that that these folks are upset at.
Yeah, it certainly would be a feature for them.
Yeah. But I think, I mean, like if I have to point to an ultimate agenda, I really do think it's ending public education. I think they want children homeschooled, they want them in religious schools, they want them in some cases in, private boarding schools. Public education is such a democratizing force. It's where you meet people who don't look like you, who didn't grow up like you. It's where you learn ideas that challenge you. It's where you learn critical thinking skills that make you less susceptible to authoritarianism. Like it is sort of the biggest thing standing in the way of a fascist takeover is a strong public school system. So that agenda is like absolutely front of mind for them. If they could get rid of that, it would be much, much easier to control us all.
And the overall goal of the heritage folks, I mean, Trump's goal is just id and power, right? But
Right.
Is Christian theocracy, is turning them into US into a Christian theocracy and a very specific kind of Christian, I should say specifically a Christian nationalist theocracy. Yeah. One last question and then we'll wrap up.
I think that pretty much does it for the chat, unless
right.
someone wants to go ahead and put one in.
Okay, well, Jess, do you want to leave us with any last thoughts, and then I'll leave a couple of last plugs for folks?
No, I just want to say thank you again for doing this, for having the conversations that you're going to have, for your enthusiasm and your passion and your dedication, and being here on a Thursday night. I didn't even know what day of the week it was. Take care of yourselves, please.
For
Get
sure.
some rest. We have 104 days to go.
100% to all of that. Please, you're on our email list if you signed up for this, so we'll be in touch. If you want to talk to Candace or myself about how to fight back in your own ways in your own community, our door is always open. And Candace's email address is in that explainer document that we dropped in there that Candace will probably drop again right now because I mentioned it. And one more time, I'll say, if you appreciate this, we also do run on donations. So if you go to educateusaction.org and then click the big donate button on the right, anything you can give really helps us keep fighting this fight. We can win this, y'all. And if we all get on it, we will.
Thank you, Jaclyn.
Thank you, Jess. Thank you, Candace. Thank you, everyone, for coming.